This day in sports history. And you found it, the one and only daily sports history podcast, currently still in production, written and produced by me, Steve White, your humble host, and an actual human. Look, I'm not anti-AI, but artificial intelligence doesn't know sports, doesn't understand the passion, it doesn't get us, and it doesn't speak the language. So, trust a human who does the research from a room full of books and online articles written by other humans. This Day in Sports History is a member of the Sports History Network, which is a group of regular guys who love sports and love talking about sports. You can find more info and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's August 29th, and on this day in 2004, the leader of the Olympic marathon was attacked just a few miles from the finish. The men's Olympic marathon was the final event of the Athens Olympics, and this was a particularly special Olympic marathon. The modern Olympic Games had been started in 1896 in Athens, and the marathon was part of that first Olympiad as a way to honor the route taken by Phidippides, which he ran from Marathon to Athens to deliver the great news of the Greek victory in the battle over the Persians. And then, of course, he died. The route run in 1896 had been around 25 miles. Well, here in 2004, it was the standard distance of 26.2 miles. But it did retrace some of those steps from the original Olympic marathon from 108 years previous. So that's a little background to get you started. Now, Brazilian runner Vanderlei de Lima was not one of the pre-race favorites, and he kind of surprised more than a few folks when he took the lead at the halfway point and then pulled away from the field. By mile 22, de Lima had stretched his lead out to 30 seconds, and he was running comfortably. Crowds stretched along the route, cheering de Lima and the others on as they passed. With 4 miles to go in the race, de Lima was cruising right down the middle of a wide street when Irishman Cornelius Horan surged onto the course, grabbed de Lima, and pushed him into the crowd. He was stunned. Where had this man in an orange kilt, green beret, green knee socks come from? What was he doing and why? The bystanders and then police subdued Horan. De Lima was able to get back to his feet and back on the race course. He wasn't harmed at all. He started running again, and he still had a lead, though it was significantly less than it had been before the attack. With 2 miles to go in the race, Italian Stefano Baldini caught him and then passed him. American Meb Keflezighi also caught and passed de Lima, and that's how they finished. Baldini won gold, Meb won silver, and de Lima took the bronze. Now, it's hard to say if de Lima could have held on to win if he had just been left alone to run. He finished a minute 15 seconds behind Baldini and about 40 seconds behind Keflezighi. But, of course, he should have been given that chance. De Lima was obviously shaken by the incident, and after the race he told the media, "I couldn't defend myself. I was totally concentrated on my race. I had to get back into my competitive rhythm, and I really lost a lot of it. It's extremely difficult to find that rhythm again." So, what was Horan's intention? As much as investigators could determine, it was strictly for publicity and exposure to tell the story that the end times were near. The man who looked like a young Bob Newhart in a Girl Scouts uniform had been a Catholic priest in Ireland before being defrocked. A year earlier, in 2003, Horan had jumped onto the Silverstone race circuit during the Formula One British Grand Prix. Several cars had to maneuver around him at 200 miles per hour to avoid killing him. He was arrested and spent 2 months in jail for that incident. For his assault on this day, he was again arrested and spent 2 years in prison. He actually had plans to disrupt the 2006 World Cup in Germany, but those plans were disrupted by the German police. On this day in 1974, Moses Malone became the first basketball player to go directly from high school to the pros. The 6'11" Malone had obviously been a high school star in Petersburg, Virginia. He'd received more than 300 offers to play college basketball from universities around the country, and he had committed to play at the University of Maryland. But on this day, Moses agreed to a contract with the ABA's Utah Stars that had a potential value of $3 million. The Stars had taken a chance in the spring draft by using a third-round pick on Malone. Most thought it was a publicity stunt, but with the NBA's restriction on not drafting underclassmen, let alone high school kids, it was worth a shot. Moses averaged 19 points and 15 boards as a 19-year-old rookie in the ABA. He spent 1 year in Utah before the franchise folded. He was traded to St. Louis, then moved on to the NBA. His success making that transition from high school to the pros opened up the opportunity for other high school players to make that jump once the NBA lifted its restrictions on underclassmen and high school players. On this day in 1885, it was the first boxing title fight under the Marquess de Queensbury rules. Those rules were instituted to regulate a sport that had been fought bare knuckle and often lasted several hours. This fight took place in Cincinnati and featured John L. Sullivan versus Dominic McCaffrey. Both fighters wore 3-ounce gloves and they fought rounds that lasted 3 minutes. Now, if you remember back to an earlier edition of This Dish when I talked about how rounds prior to the Marquess rules weren't dictated by time, but by one boxer putting the other boxer on the mat, so a round could last 15 seconds or it might last 15 minutes. Sullivan did not have any trouble with McCaffrey. He knocked him down several times in the first 6 rounds of the fight. At the end of 6 rounds, the fight was stopped and Sullivan awarded the win on points. On this day in 1925, Babe Ruth was suspended by his own manager. Now, it's no secret that the Babe enjoyed having a good time. He liked drinking, the ladies, and staying out late to enjoy all of his vices. The Yankees had been on the road for 2 weeks and had played in St. Louis on the 28th. Well, the 28th had been a Friday night. The Yankees had lost 1-0 to the St. Louis Browns, but it wasn't like Babe to commiserate a loss, so he got dressed in his going-out clothes and proceeded to party into the early hours. He missed curfew and then must have missed the wake-up call on the morning of the 29th, or he just slept through his alarm, but he got a late start to the ballpark and was late to batting practice for the afternoon game against the Browns. By this point in the year, manager Miller Huggins had had all he could take from his star player. First off, Ruth had missed the first 41 games of the 1925 season in what was termed the bellyache heard round the world. Now, there is speculation that Babe's absence for that first part of the season was due to his getting treatment for an STD, but others have offered up other reasons. Now, add to that, the Yankees were not playing very well at this point in the year. They were 22 games under 500 and 27 games back of first-place Washington. So, Ruth's attitude, flaunting of team rules, and inconsiderate attitudes to the team caused Huggins to suspend Ruth and fine him $5,000. And if you're thinking $5,000 was a lot of money in 1925, yeah, you're right, it was. First, that was about 10% of his season salary that year, and it works out to about an $88,000 fine in today's money. He was forced to apologize to his teammates and then was reinstated after missing 6 games. 1925 was Ruth's worst season statistically with the Yankees, and while his getting suspended on this day didn't stop the Babe from having a good time when he was on the road or at home in New York, it probably did curtail it just a bit. And on this day in 1973, Nolan Ryan came very close to pitching a no-hitter. Now, he'd already pitched 2 no-hitters for the California Angels in the 73 season. And of course, Ryan is the all-time leader in career no-hitters with 7. But he was super close to yet another one on this day. And no pitcher has ever thrown 3 no-hitters in the same season. And sure, lots of guys have pitched one-hitters, a gapper, a flare, maybe even a bunt single spoiling an otherwise hitless day. But this is how close he came. The Angels were playing the Yankees. In the first inning, Thurman Munson popped one up in the infield, and this became a case of, I got it, and nobody got it. It fell between 2 players who thought the other one had it. That was the only hit allowed all day long. Ryan struck out 10, and he walked 3 in a 5-0 win for the Angels. Time now for today's non-sports fun fact. The most common object in the universe, possessing mass, that is the neutrino. Those tiny particles are more numerous than anything else by far. 1 trillion neutrinos fly through each of your fingernails every second. That's all I've got for you today. I'll be back tomorrow with more This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.